Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Welcome, magical ones. I have been loving expressing myself through video recently, so if you have not yet checked it out, I am now on TikTok and you can find me at Team Secret Witch. I'm also sharing a lot more on Instagram at I am Nicole Barton and at Archetypal Apothecary. So that's where I'm sharing. Go ahead and join me there. On the Secret Witch Show today, though, our guest is Jade Scarfoni. Jade is a tech and systems witch on a mission to support those who are drawn to working in the spiritual business realms but don't necessarily want to be coaches or facilitators. And she also connects spiritual entrepreneurs with those that she has trained as tech witches so that they can have support in their queendom. Having supported many spiritual entrepreneurs with their systems, launches, social media and content over the last 5 years, Jade has founded a school for tech witches to do just that. She is a great example of a woman who has learned how to own her weird in business. In this episode, we explore her journey with the witch wound and how she journeyed with some of the blocks of owning the label witch, including the good girl wound and her fear of disapproval and judgment, the fear of her feminine power, the fear of trusting magic, and being her fullest truthful expression. We talked all things religious deconditioning, embodiment, and sexuality, and how owning your full expression is magnetic and a healing archetypal remedy for those who need your gift. Let's dive in. Welcome, Jade. Oh my goodness, I love your energy. I'm so excited to have you here. And this particular episode on owning your weird in business is going to be so serving for so many of our listeners as an example of just how to show up as yourself and create a business from your full expression. So welcome, love.
Nicole, it's so exciting to be here.
Oh, yeah, I'm really excited for this conversation. So where I normally start is I would love to hear your journey with the what I call the witch wound. So many of our magical listeners really fear owning their kind of woo-woo, and I would love to invite you to share your journey with healing that and creating a business where you really own your weird. I think it would be cool to hear a bit of your journey.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, that's for sure. So I grew up in a Catholic background, very traditional family values, and did the whole traditional path, go to uni, get a job, worked my way up the corporate ladder. And about 10 years into working at a bank, I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And I came across these people who were working online, traveling the world and doing blogs and all of this kind of stuff. And I was like, that seems cool. I want to do that. And so I just quit my job, dove into this online business world, had no idea what I was doing, came up against all these hurdles along the way. Long story short, the original business I started failed because it was an affiliate company that got shut down. But during that business, I'd learned a lot of skills that enabled me to then be hired to do support work for other people. And in the end, I became the go-to tech person for all the sexuality coaches on the East Coast, somehow that became my niche. And all of a sudden I was just in this world of expression and embodiment and sexuality. And I was like, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Like, I'm this good Catholic girl, and I'm just like shedding all of that conditioning and jumping into this world where my entire worldview just was challenged and changed. And yeah, that led me to where I am today, where I've now created my own business called Tech Witch, which was fully about embracing the term witch. So yeah, coming a long way from being that good Catholic girl to now being a full-blown witch expressing herself on the internet.
I love that. I love that so much. There's so many places I could kind of dive into there that I want to dive into. So we'll come to all of them, but there's like a few pieces that stood out to me. Firstly, I think the theme around like the good girl is one that my women definitely relate to. Like often, yeah, they've kind of lived their lives for approval, and I got that sense of like the conditioning is very similar to my own journey, whereas like you think that you have to do a certain, like, I'm going to call it muggle career, like and you kind of end up like going through all of the motions and in this corporate career. It strikes me as there was like a deep amount of courage that you just were like, no, I've had enough, I'm just going to quit it. Like that's pretty cool.
It took a lot of deliberation, and it definitely upset my dad, especially because he worked in the banking industry as well. So it was kind of like this common thread that we had, and we were working with a lot of the same clients and all of that kind of stuff. And then one day I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And there was a lot of that fear around, I'm going to let my dad down, I'm going to let my family down. And part of me was just like, I have to make this choice though, because I was actually about to go on antidepressants. I'd taken stress leave, and the bank was putting me through this mental health plan. And I was like, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? Like, maybe if I just quit and go traveling, I'd be happy and I wouldn't need the antidepressants. So that's the path I chose instead. And it's been a wild ride, but it's definitely been worth it.
I love that. It's I often talk about like these portals in our life of where we hit up against these things that seem like awful at the time. They're really like our deeper initiations into who we are. And it very much speaks to like my own was kind of similar. I was in corporate and just hit burnout, which kind of sounds like that's where you were arriving at too, and often is kind of where my women will come from, is that kind of hitting of like, this just isn't for me. And it's like we can see that in so many different ways. Like we can either see it as like awful, like you say, like go down the antidepressant route, or we can see it as like this wake up of like, this, I'm just not living from alignment. So I love that you shared that. How did you navigate the thing with feeling like disappointing your dad? I'm just curious about that.
That's an interesting, it's an interesting one. And it's like something it's probably been my biggest journey throughout this whole online business. And like a lot of when I do emotional clearing work, and when I've like gone deep into what's been holding me back from like hitting the next levels of business, it always comes back to like that daddy stuff. Which is always like, it's either I'm letting him down or I'm gonna lose the connection to him. So it's like, yeah, it was a big thing. And I just reached a point where I think by having the people around me that were entrepreneurial and that were encouraging me and that were an example of this is possible, and seeing that was my way of kind of convincing my dad that I was doing the right thing for me, and that if you like, I think I even said, like, if you really love me, just like let me go do this.
No, bless your heart.
So yeah, and I remember even because I was investing a lot of money into this business too, and so that was a big risk. And he was always the save for a rainy day and don't do this, and I was like, but I want to do it. So there was a bit of that rebellion too, where I was like, nah, you're telling me not to, so I'm gonna do it. And
I love that you presence that. That's what it's one of the things that I see, and it's like part of the journey again, is that where my women have normally traveled before they arrive at this work is kind of like they're in that good girl phase, and then they like flip into the complete opposite and be like, no, sod this, I'm a rebel now. And like there's that whole journey that kind of has to happen as part of it before we then kind of arrive at a place that's like, no, I don't need to rebel, and I don't need to be a good girl. I can just be me.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I love
Would you say
that.
that's how your kind of journey has been?
Definitely. And I probably still bounce a little bit
Yeah.
because now it's more like rebelling against myself. Like I'll
It's
get to
always
the
that,
point.
really.
Yeah. It's like I'll get to the point where I've set all these rules for my business, like primarily for social media, for instance. I'll be like, I can only post this and I have to post it on these terms and blah blah. And then one day I'll be just like, I don't want to do that. And I'll change my brand or change the colors and post something else and just be like, nah, this is what I feel like today. So there's still a bit of that rebellious nature in me, but it's not as extreme anymore, I would say.
They're gorgeous. Let me just see what else there was that I wanted to dive into, because there was so much in what you shared. The other piece, the other piece that I loved about what you shared was like you went and did it, and then you said, and then that failed. And it was like, that's such a big fear of my women, but it sounds like that failure was kind of needed in order to actually put you on track to what you're here to do.
Yeah, it really was. And at the time, I obviously didn't see it because I was in this business where we were making like ridiculous sums of money. Like, I think I'd wake up to $20,000 commissions and just like these insane amounts that from not actually having to work very hard either. It was just like plugging people into a system and then it was all automated. So I went from that to then suddenly this company was being investigated for fraud and it got shut down. And I was like, oh my God, what have I done? I've let all these people into this business and now my reputation's on the line and I've let all these people down and I've lost all this money that I'd never received because they didn't pay it out to us. And so it was like the first time in my life that I really was like, oh, I don't just have money coming to me easily because obviously coming from corporate world, working in a bank, I was on a very good income, left that, went straight into this incredible affiliate offer. And then suddenly I was dealing with all of the money wounding and was like, oh, this is my journey now to learn to actually appreciate this. And yeah, then it just kind of pivoted me onto this path of actually I've learned these really valuable skills, but I'm not actually aligned with that hustle, entrepreneurial, money obsessed kind of world, which is very much what that was about. And now I've come to a much more like spiritual embodied world where it's like, oh yeah, like I actually really align with the people I work with now. And I really want to support these people and see these messages going out to the world. So it's more like coming from a heart value space rather than I'm just in it for money, which is all it was back then.
I love that. And in my experience, like we can think it's a choice between the two, but actually as we kind of align with our deeper purpose, it's like it's yeah, the money kind of comes to us, but it's not it isn't so much the focus is what I've seen and experienced for myself. So I don't know what your sense of that is, but that's yeah, feeling important for women to know as well. But I love that kind of failure was needed to realign you with what you are here for. Gorgeous. So just coming to the witch, like the journey with that, because given your like religious background, I know this is something that really comes up for my women. And do you know what? It's not actually something that I've given an awful lot of thought to myself. But as you were speaking about it, it reminded me that like I grew up and went to a Catholic school. So there must be like some pieces there. But I know certainly for my women, there's a lot there about religion. So I'm just wondering if you can speak to that a little bit.
Sure. I love this topic. This one, there's so many angles I could go. But so I've got like Italian background. So I'm the deepest religious kind of cult you could be part of, essentially, like Roman Catholic, original, that part. And it's quite fascinating because we were actually having a conversation with a few friends the other day around people who are like going born again. And I was like, I wonder if there's ever any risk of that happening to me. And everyone was like, people who come from Roman Catholic background have spent so much time deconditioning themselves from that religion. There is no chance you're going to go back. I was like, good. And then I was like remembering moments from my childhood where my nonna wouldn't even let us watch like Sabrina the Teenage Witch just because it was the word witch in it, and because they had that fear like really bred into them as children growing up in Italy. But she's like the biggest witch I know. If you actually look at what she does, like she uses all her herbal remedies, and she used to write us all these little like she called them prayers, but they were definitely spells that she would write. And like when we went traveling or when we did things, she was like, you need to take this on the plane with you, or you need to put this under your bed at night. So I grew up with magic, but not knowing that it actually was that. And so, yeah, it was kind of like embedded there. But because of the religious background, it was like, well, no, like witches are terrible and witches are awful, and we can't associate with that. And yeah, then it was just like by coming into this space of working with people that call themselves witches all the time and like do magic and stuff, I was like, oh, maybe I can say that I am one. And then I went and did Easter. And during one of the rituals in there, like I had this really deep experience of like being taken back to being like burnt at the stake and like not being able to speak, and like I actually had my friend facilitating the ritual for me, so we were able to go pretty deep as well. And like there was one moment where he just had his hands around my neck, and I was just like screaming like, you can't take my tongue this time, like I'm gonna speak. And so I think that was a really pivotal moment for me where I was like, okay, like I don't need to fear this anymore, like I can own this and claim that I am a witch.
Oh, I love that so much. So what you're saying there, or what I'm hearing in that, is like you kind of didn't own the witch until you had a real felt embodied sense of her in your body.
Yeah, there'd been like moments where I was like, it's actually funny as well, because I was living in the Sunshine Coast, which had more of a like love and light vibe. And then I started working with all of these people in the Northern Rivers and coming to these events here and being like, oh my God, like everything here is just darker and sexier and more fun. And I was like, I need to be down there. And then the moment down here, it's yeah, the moment I moved here, it was like, yeah, you're getting thrown right in. And I lived in the forest for the first few months of living here, and I just like with these other two women, and I like went through this phase of just like being in the forest every day, like talking to the animals, and it just felt like I was in this magical portal, and I could feel it awakening in me.
I love that on so many levels. Like, it's just making me chuckle thinking about Australia divided into like goddess light stuff, and then the witches are like down here. I love that. Now I know where to go. Now I've actually already been, and I totally get what you mean by that. That's just made me chuckle. But yeah, and that's actually something that is really part of the message that I share, is that often women can, in fact, my team just shared a post about this morning, about how like there's this body of work in the self-help world about like goddess embodiment, and it's like I think so many women who are witches can get drawn into that work because they're, you know, the witch is very good at working with archetypes in general, because she's also really good at kind of shape shifting. She can wear a mask because she's been used to like being the good girl who's wearing this mask, and she kind of can get easily, like, I mean, she probably needs to go down that path, but there's like she'll get drawn into the goddess, what I call goddess dress up or woo light or goddess light work, when actually which isn't intrinsically light, it's still valuable, it's just the way that it's interacted with, whereas the witch really is the kind of like the dark, gritty, like truthful expression. And yeah, it's often where my women have journeyed through is the Sunshine Coast. I think you said they've been there, and they want to go to the Northern Rivers. Yeah, I love that. But what I'm really hearing is that it was like the embodied work, the embodiment, that really helped you to reclaim your witch. So
because everyone was like, it was all about like actually like getting into the earth and like grounding and like being in the body and feeling the things. And then it's like, oh, like there's this wildness in me that wants to be expressed, and there's this deeper sense of like knowing that started to arise in my body, that I was here for more than just this surface level stuff. And then it got to this point where I was like, I can't even like have small talk conversations and stuff. It's like, no, that's so boring to me. I need to like go to the deeper places.
I love that, because so many of our women are typically kind of in that disconnection from body. So this is often why people, I think, struggle to be their full selves, because if we're disconnected from our body, we can't even know who that is. Gorgeous. Let me just see where to go next. Yeah, and of course the witch herself is a powerful archetype. So I love that you have brought her into your business. Like what had you do that? I guess I'm curious about that.
That definitely was from my rebellious nature. So basically, like I had this idea to create this school like probably 2 years before I actually brought it to life. But when I was doing the work, I was just either people were referring to me as their virtual assistant, or they'd give me other terms, but nothing really landed. And when it came down to me creating a school, I was like, I need it to have like a catchy name. I don't want to just call it VA school. I don't want to be a vanilla kind of VA. That's not who I am. And I just never resonated with it. Yeah, it's just not who I am. And then I was working in a particular team, which was like a sexuality school. And so they would all refer to themselves as sex witches. And then one day, the lady that ran the business called me and one of the other girls the tech witches. And something in me was like, yes, that's what I am. And then, yeah, when I created Tech Witch School, it was like, oh, do I go down that road? Like, is it a bit too edgy to put that in the title? Is it going to scare people away? And when I did the initial branding, it was full like, come join me in hell, like murderous red kinds of colors. And it was very intense witchy vibes. which has been toned down since then to be more freedom blue vibes. But yeah, for me, it was really just about expressing this archetype that I wanted to express. And I wasn't really even I wasn't thinking about avatars or anything at that point. It was just like, this is me, and I'm just trusting this thing that's moving through me. And then later refined it.
I love that. Yeah. There's trust is definitely one of those things. I think that goes with embodiment, but it's something certainly that my women struggle with. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you came to trust that.
Yeah, I guess the biggest piece in my journey has been the self-pleasure and sex magic kind of work that I've been doing, because so I first started working with it probably about 2 years ago, when I started working in that team where I was called the Tech Witch. And that was actually like, we were building a school that was teaching people the self-pleasure modality. And so often, like, we'd have team planning days where we'd all be in self-pleasure rituals together. And that was like the weirdest thing for me the first time I went to one of these planning days. And I was like, okay, this is my life now. And then obviously, like, that's something that we do regularly in other containers now. So it's just become something that's really been embedded in my life. And it's probably the one thing that really gets me out of my head and like gets me into that kind of trance state where I'm just not thinking and obsessing over stuff. And I'm just like, okay, what's wanting to move through me? And if I'm wanting to get clarity on business decisions, I generally will do a self-pleasure ritual and then like go into some kind of journaling process after. And then whatever comes from there, I'm like, okay, that's like my true higher self that's speaking right now. I'm not thinking, I'm not adding my stories to it. So let's run with that.
I love that. And yeah, it's always like I think one of the things that I've been doing some avatar interviews recently for my audience to see what's going to be really serving for them as I birth through my own modality. And one of the things that's become really clear is that the way that I work, and I think the way that you're speaking to there is that this is the work of real magic. And like what women kind of come to my doors expecting is like some kind of mapped out logical container of like, tell me how to express myself, tell me how to do XYZ, and or tell me how to like reclaim my feminine power and magic. And it's like, okay, there's no XYZ here. It's like, we're talking about magic, and magic is really going to be something that we engage in, and then it will reveal more to us. And it sounds like that's what you're speaking to there, is like this sense of like setting an intention for something to be downloaded, for more to be revealed about who you are and what you're here for, and allowing yourself to have that revealed to you. Would you say that's kind of a good summary?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's just about coming back to that trust piece. It's like, and it's definitely not something I've mastered. Like, I still have moments where I'm like questioning everything and I'm like, what am I doing? But that's when I realized like it's time to actually return back to magic, because it's like when things aren't feeling quite right, I'm like, oh yeah, I've been too obsessed in the mind kind of place and logic place, and I'm not really in the felt embodied place of why I'm doing this. And so when I get back into doing my rituals and being out in nature more, like that's a big piece for me as well, is just spending as much time as possible outside, like actually like in the earth, being like, what do you want me to do? And trusting that.
I saw you on a rock on your stories the other day. I was like, oh, that looks amazing.
I have Pisces rising, so I'm very inclined to just lay around on rocks and be a mermaid as much as I can.
I love that so much. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you on the nature side of things as well. I think trust is definitely a big piece for my women, especially another thing that I see, because my women tend to be brilliant and deep, like you were talking to. And I really think there's a piece when we have that kind of gift of brilliance, there tends to be like the shadow of that is like either like really logic, like like we were just speaking to, really like this tendency to like want a logical, linear, clear path where we can understand everything, or the flip side of the kind of magic shadow is like where we completely give everything to magic and then completely ignore structure, logic, all the masculine things. So I think that's there's like, again, a deep integration for women who well, with magic and the journey with magic, which I love. But yeah, no, I love that. I'm wondering, because the title, I believe, of this episode is How to Own Your Weird in Business. Can we talk to the weird piece, like the fear of being weird?
I love that. There's so many moments where I'm like out and about and I'll just be in my own little world, and then I'll like have this moment of coming back to reality and noticing that there's people around me, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so weird. Just little things like, because I'll often work in cafes, and so I'm just completely oblivious to what's going on around me, and I'll get in a zone, and then I'll like get into a state where I'm like, okay, I need to like clear some emotions right now. I'm like, what's moving? And I'll forget that there's people around and just be in my process. Or yeah, I often do that out like at the beach, and we'll just be what's like spinning around and dancing on rocks and things, and then I look around and I'm like, oh, there's all these people watching me, oops.
That's so much.
And yeah, I've just gotten, and I was thinking about it yesterday because I was like, there's no way I would have been caught dead doing anything like that a few years ago. Like, especially when I was still working at the bank, it was very much, you have to be like this prim, proper, perfect person all the time. And now I'm just like, okay, whatever, anyone can see me and that's fine.
Yeah, I love that so much. And part of me wants to ask about like how you arrived there as well. Like, how did you move from being in banking and corporate, where you wouldn't have, because I think this is something that became clear in the interviews as well, is that there's this sense of like people hiding their crystals. And I know I was chatting to one of my someone I know on Instagram, and she was like, yeah, I just moved my altar away because my landlord was coming in. And I was like, oh, interesting, because like you, like I'm just fully in my weird. Don't even bat an eye. In fact, I remember we had a conversation, didn't we, where I was like in the swimming pool with my family and like shouting across the pool to my partner. I was like, oh, I need a tech witch, like this is what I need. And like I said it a few times, and then I was chuckling to myself being like, I wonder what everybody's thinking about this conversation. Like, what is a tech witch? It's just like so normal for me to be saying things like that, but everybody else must be like, what the hell?
Yeah.
There was a question in there somewhere.
I can't remember
what it was. I think it was like, how did you arrive at like owning?
Right. Yeah. As just as you were saying that, though, I was picturing my last house with my housemate, and it was up for sale, and there were people coming in to look at it, and we literally had like death altars at the front of the house, rock circles and all of these things, and we were like, we're not going to pack them away. Where people can come in and see that this is a witch house, and either they'll be scared or they'll love it. So that's the extent I'm at now. But there was the fate. Like, I actually, when I first started getting into this kind of stuff, I was in a relationship and he was definitely not approving of this stuff. And so even like in my relationship, I felt like I had to hide because and that was just when I was just getting into like the basic stuff like crystals and tarot cards and all the just entry level stuff. But it was, to him, was like the scariest thing in the world. So yeah, it came from that point of hiding. And when I was still working, it was very much like, don't even talk about that kind of stuff. And I had separate Instagram pages, and like had lists of people that I blocked content from so that they wouldn't see who I was online. And it was like constantly compartmentalizing my life to be, and like, yeah, wearing the mask everywhere. It was like, okay, I have to be this person here and this person here and this person here. And then it was once I came to the Northern Rivers that it was just like, I can be whoever I want to be, because everyone around me is so open and expressive. And it was actually when I moved here where I actually started to feel like I'm not as weird as them, and I'm not as expressive. And so it made me want to like actually clear more and get to a point where I was more comfortable in myself to be wilder and louder and more expressive. So it's, yeah, been like a big journey of permission in the more recent years.
I love that. So yeah, you are full on secret witch. And what I'm hearing in that is sort of like a sense of community was kind of permission giving as well.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. That's something we really have here, is a beautiful community.
Yeah, that's gorgeous. There's something I think around also how, like, because one of the things that I see women do who are trying to be their gifts and their kind of more spiritual gifts, bring those into the world, is that they can often kind of dilute, because of this idea that we have to hide and there's something wrong with being a witch. They kind of dilute their medicine, and even to the point where they'll just be like a general practitioner of magic, if you like, but like they'll dilute it in a way that isn't them being their full expression, because there's that fear of like people judging them, I guess. And what I have seen more and more is that as we step out and step into like our true selves, that is actually what is magnetic to the right people. And I see this in terms of like archetypal remedies. So when we're fully expressing our own unique archetypal remedy, like for me, one of the principles of my work, the foundation of my work, is this idea that like cures like. And I think when we're being our full expression, we will literally draw in and magnetize those who resonate with it. And if we're talking about us being energetic remedies, like what we resonate with will be healing for us. So yeah, I'm just wondering if you have anything to share around that and what you've seen with that in your business creation.
I love that. Yeah, it's funny because when you brought up that kind of angle when we were first talking, I was like, I'm not healing people. I'm not doing anything of that sort. And then, yeah, the deeper I thought into it, I was like, oh, actually, there's all these people popping up calling themselves tech witches now, and they wouldn't have done that if this movement didn't get started somehow. So in a way, I've supported people to go out and claim their own witch and call themselves that. And it's been a really beautiful process to witness. And it's actually like, was never my intention. Like one of my first training videos actually says, you do not need to call yourself a tech witch. You can call yourself whatever you want to call you. I'm here to teach you the skills, but you get to express yourself however you want to express yourself. And then to see so many of them going out there and actually use that terminology, I'm like, oh, it's so beautiful. And yeah, like there have been women that have asked questions on like, how did you get comfortable calling yourself a witch and like putting that in your brand and actually expressing yourself in that way? And it was like, again, for me, it was like, because I'm so like from that religious background, it's just been like a basically, well, I want to go the complete opposite to my upbringing. So I'm going to fully go out and claim that I'm a witch, which was my reasoning. And now it's like more of an embodied, like I actually feel it. but yeah, like there have been other women in the container that have journeyed that too, and are like, but people are saying this to me now, and they're not resonating. I'm like, if it feels true to you, just keep owning that. And yeah, like you were saying, it magnetizes the right people to you who are gonna resonate with that. So they're experiencing that too.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's a really important point in there. I'm going to try and describe it eloquently. But it feels like I loved what you said about I didn't see what I was doing as healing. And one of the things that I see often with women who are witches is that they're here with this gift, and they so often think that their gift is the tool that they're using. So in your case, I guess that tool would be tech, but actually the real medicine is who you are and who you're being. And so if I was looking at you, for example, and it's funny, I always, when I'm speaking to a guest, I kind of feel into their energetic archetypal remedy from the archetypal apothecary modality that I'm creating. Because it kind of like is the intention for what we're going to create together. And if I was looking at you, I would say there's like a very, you probably won't know this remedy, but it's a remedy called Thuya, which I believe is the tree of life or something like that. But it has a lot of religious conditioning. It has a lot of that sort of, like, there's a big sexuality theme in that. So like these are the shadow and the gold, like the shadow and gold in both. So you're now really fully expressing Thuya into the world. And what I would imagine is that that's deeply healing for all the other Thuya women who have the same kind of patterns and the same things, like the religious themes and wanting to own their sexuality. And no matter what the medium is that you're kind of guiding them into, i.e. being a tech witch, like you're still being medicine for those people. So I don't know how that lands with you, but that's generally how I see the world. So I loved what you said about like you didn't think it was healing, but actually it really is medicine.
I love that. That's really beautiful. And actually, when you're just speaking to that as well, it's kind of like, even just as a byproduct of them coming and doing the tech work, like because of the network that I've got, which is primarily people who are like sexuality coaches and embodiment leaders and facilitators in that world, it's like when I partner them in doing the work with them, they're naturally gonna go on a similar journey to what I went on working with these kind of people. So maybe it's not me that's firsthand imparting these deeper layers on them, but they are coming into this world because they're feeling drawn to that, and this is like an avenue that allows them an entry into that world. So
gorgeous. Yeah, I talk about that actually as like an activation. It's like you're essentially being an archetype that is activating a piece of them that they maybe didn't even know was part of them. So yeah, it feels deeply healing to me. One of the other things that I was curious to speak to you about, and it's maybe not so much about like owning your weird, but I think given the work that you do and you're supporting women who are bringing their gifts into the world, or your people are like the people that you're teaching, one of the things, and I was chatting to a one-to-one client about this the other day, one of the things that's been a huge part of my own journey is that of receiving support in building your queendom. And I know that's obviously what you provide to like, or your women provide. So I'm just wondering if you can talk a little bit to that in terms of like how we grow our business and our queendom and how necessary support is in that, because I think that's also a really important thing to talk to for my women who are looking to bring their gifts into the world, because there's a sense that like we have to struggle and do it all alone, whereas actually like I have a team. You obviously provide support to other leaders, so yeah, I think that'd be a juicy thing to speak to.
That's actually a really interesting one, because it's something I'm journeying myself now as I'm stepping out of kind of doing so much of the support work and creating my own business. It's like, now I'm the one that also has to hire people, and I'm going through that struggle of, but I do this for other people, so why would I hire people to do it for me? And has kind of been that. resistance and like, I need to do it on my own, and coming to terms of, no, I don't. And the whole reason I've loved this work is because I see what a gift it is for the people that I'm supporting to have someone who's truly invested in their vision and their message, standing behind them, helping them get it out into the world. And the truth is, like, we all have different gifts and we all have different skills, and the people with like you with these beautiful medicines and modalities and things to bring to the world generally don't want to be behind the scenes trying to figure out how to put something into a website or create a course or make a landing page. Like, that actually just hurts your brain. And actually on a call earlier with a new client, and she was like, I just want to go sit out there and drink margaritas while you figure this all out because it's hurting my brain. And I was like, I'm here to not let you have to deal with all of that. So yeah, it's like allowing yourself to have the support because you know that you've got such a gift that the world needs, and letting people help you get it out there means that you can actually spread it quicker and reach the right people in a faster way. So it's actually super beneficial.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things that I journeyed with that was like, well, I could do it. Like, you know, some of these things that I was thinking about needing a team. I was like, but I can do it. Like, it's still my zone of excellence. And it's like that whole zone of excellence versus zone of genius. Like, for me, I'd rather be doing the things that are in my zone of genius. And it feels necessary that, you know, even if they are in my zone of excellence, that if it's not like something that is going to be serving, then it's really important to get that support. So I love that the work that you're doing is really supporting women who have got these spiritual gifts and this medicine to be able to bring that into the world in a way that's fully supported. That just feels so nourishing to me.
Mm-hmm. It really is. And it's funny as well, because now experiencing it from the other side of actually receiving support too, it's like making me even realize how much more valuable it is, because I'd always heard from the people I was working with like how much they appreciated what I did for them, but I never like really knew what I was doing until I've now got someone doing content for me, for example. And it's like, when I've been in this state of, I don't feel like I want to post and I don't want to do this, and like in my own little ego depths around stepping into leadership and stuff, I've still had someone behind the scenes posting content that I created a few weeks ago when I was feeling good about everything. And so it's like, that's the real like beauty in having people support you, because they can still show up for your message, even if you're maybe not feeling so on top of things, or if you want to go and take a break, because obviously we create businesses for freedom. So having those support and systems around you to actually know, okay, I can take a week off and everything's not going to fall apart, is really supportive.
I love that so much. You're just talking about leadership. I was just wondering about how you journeyed with stepping into being a leader in this industry and the sorts of blocks that you hit up against, because I think that's also a juicy place to go.
It's one I'm still in. I'm like, yeah, it's one I've been feeling a lot of contraction around recently, and it's like each launch I'm like, oh, do I really want to do this? Like, can I really hold this? And I was really made to go into the feeling of failure over the last few weeks, because I was like sitting in that of, but what if people aren't going to buy this time? And what if the first time was a complete fluke and it just was like beginner's luck and all of that kind of stuff? And then I actually sat with it this morning and went a bit deeper, and it was like, it's actually more a fear of success and what I equate success to being. And it's like, is success like restriction because of the kinds of entrepreneurs I've seen around me and that have been an example to me. It's like all the top ones are always talking about hustle and work harder and sacrifice. And I was like, do I really want to do that? And so there's been this self-sabotaging process of, maybe I want to fail, like maybe being a failure is actually okay because then I don't have to do that. So that's the level I reached today, where it was like, okay, I'm actually okay with moving beyond this now. So we'll see what happens from here.
I love that. I love that so much. And also the vulnerability that you share that with is gorgeous as well. But I think this is such a big piece in that. I think it's actually the kind of number one fear that my women feel, is that kind of fear of their power. And you'd think it would be like fear of failure, but it's actually the fear of their power that is more scary to my women. I think as a witch, particularly, a witch is like a full feminine power force. Like she's so powerful that she uses her power against herself to create fear. But yeah, I love that. And for me, it's one of the reasons why that kind of reclamation of our feminine power is really, really important. And I think there's a whole conversation there around like feminine and masculine business. But I loved what you said about hustle, because I think that's another thing my women often fear, is like that burnout. It's like, well, if I'm powerful, then I'm gonna burn out. I'm gonna be in hustle. And yeah, it's, for me, the witch as an archetype is really about learning to create our business from the feminine, from feminine power, from softness, from vulnerability, from openness, and in support, being supported by the masculine as well. Yeah.
I love
about that?
Yeah, I really love that piece you mentioned about the power, because I feel like that does come like with that deeply ingrained witch wound of like, if you speak up and if you actually do share your power, like you've got the chance of being caught and people talking about you and burning you and all of that kind of stuff. So there is this kind of fear of like, oh, if I do actually share my message, what's the risk? And yeah, I'm so powerful that actually there could be damage happen, and like, so that's a fear. And yeah, I think that's one that still is present for me at times too. It's like feeling the power and then being like, oh my God, I'm so powerful. Like, what if I actually did use this power? What would actually happen? And there's that fear of like, oh, like I could hurt people or I could upset people. And so it's like you kind of tone it down a little bit, and it's just like, no, I'm allowed to use this because I'm actually using it for good. So constantly having those conversations with yourself to move through it.
Yeah, I love that so much. Yeah, and just to bring it back, I think as well, I posted about this yesterday, about how like it can be so tempting from the self-help perspective to think that it's like, oh, we'll clear this and then it's gone and it's done forever. And I love how you keep saying, well, it's still something I'm journeying with. And I think like these wounds are, well, the feminine wound is like collective. It's like, it's built into our culture. But they're things, the wounds that we have, whether they're like our kind of core personal wounds or the more collective ones, these are things that our soul is essentially chosen into like journeying with for our whole life. So the way I see it is that we're kind of, it's never going to be completely healed. Like it's an ongoing journey. So I don't know how you see that as well, but it feels like for me, like the witch wound and dealing with our being our weird in business is really a constant like meeting a new edge of expanding into the next level of our vision and loving 100%. Ourselves there as well.
Definitely. And I think like having the awareness that we're actually not needing to be fixed or fully healed. It's like, it is an ongoing journey, and we get to love ourselves in every part of the journey and keep growing and keep expanding. And it is a journey. So getting to enjoy that whole process. And I think that comes back to where you were speaking into the feminine and masculine parts of business. It's like, it's great to be in those that feminine, flowy, open, receptive state. But what allows us to really be powerful and really lean into that state is having the systems and structures around us that do support us. So regardless of what we're going through, it's less chaotic and less tumultuous. And it's like, okay, like I can get through this because I know I've got some automated process that's happening behind the scenes. So if I'm having a day or two where I'm in an ego death and falling apart and melting into the ground, like nothing feels like it's going to get done, like there's still things that are actually working behind the scenes that are getting done so the business can still keep moving and you're still feeling held and supported because you've created those structures around you. So yeah, like I feel like that's really important and why I love working with systems and tech stuff.
Yes.
Because yeah,
I love that so much. I always say, like, I think when I talk about like my business being like a feminine business, people just assume that I'm just like floating around and yeah. And one of the things that I've really seen, and people will be surprised, is at the level of systems in my business. And there's always like room for development. But the way I see it is like we are feminine essence beings, and we need to be supported by the masculine in order to be in that flow. So I love that you share that.
Yeah, and that's always a work in progress too. Like I feel like every time you have one of these, or every time I have one of these experiences, it's like an opportunity to review the systems I've got in place and be like, okay, well, these things can improve. So next time it'll happen even, like it'll get through that even quicker and I'll be more supported. So yeah, constant learning journey.
Gorgeous. Well, I would, it feels like a good place to bring it to a close. I would love to invite you to share how people can follow you, get in touch with you, what you're up to. So please feel free to share. Where can we find you?
Thank you. So my favorite place is Instagram because I am a visually expressive person. So I have a lot of content. I have a personal account, which is just my name, Jade Marie Scarfoni. And then if anyone's interested in actually, and that's like completely me just sharing my life and whatever I feel like talking. It's gone back to being more of a journal, which is how I used to always like to treat it. And then I've got my business account, which is Tech Witch School. So that's where you can learn all the things about what we're doing, teaching tech witches. And if you ever want to hire one for yourself, that's where you can reach out and hire the right person to support you. And yeah, both of those Instagram accounts have links to quizzes that you can take and other things you can do to learn more about it. So yeah,
amazing. We will include all of those in the show notes as well. So yeah, thank you so much. It's been such a juicy conversation.
Yeah, I really loved that. I knew this was going to be a good one because just the name of the show and what you're about, I was just like, yeah, this is going to be fun.
Oh, thank you, love. Thank you for being with us. That was a juicy episode. I was loving that. Here are my key takeaways. When owning our weird, some of the fears that come up are the fear of losing love and approval, and we have to learn to hold ourselves through the transition from good girl and rebel until we arrive at a place of our true self-expression. There's a deep fear often of owning our power, because if we do, we can be burned at the stake for saying stuff that will have people talk about us. Community is important in owning your inner witch. If we are surrounded by other witches, it doesn't seem so weird anymore. Grounding and being embodied is important in helping us to trust our full expression. We can't know ourselves without being embodied. Magical practice is real and we have to trust it to reveal more of ourselves. It's different to working in the logical lens we are used to in our culture. For Jade, sex magic is a core practice that helps her get into a trance state, to get out of her head and into her body, to know what business wants to be birthed through her and into the world. Even when our tools don't look like they are healing, when we remember we are the medicine, we can see what a gift we offer in our full expression. If you'd like to get the show notes and links for everything we've chatted about in this episode, head to www.secretwitch.co.uk. If you know a secret witch who would love this episode, please share with them to help them liberate themselves. And so you don't miss out on next week's episode, head to your podcast app of choice and hit subscribe. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.